topic for today is about conservatism and liberalism or progressivism. I'll group them in the same camp, and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So first, I'm going to talk a bit about my views about conservatism. We'll start with there, and then I'm going to move into liberalism as just kind of an opposite, basically, direction. Talk about character traits around this, and also kind of like the moral consequences or outcomes of these two worldviews or political, flavors. And we'll also touch upon libertarianism, but really the main point is we want to get to crypto and what it means for Bitcoin. I'm going to make the assertion, I'll make it right now, that Bitcoin is an inherently cynical uh, token, or it's a cynical play on the global macroeconomics, and also that liberalism is cynical too. So conservatism is actually extremely optimistic, and we'll get into that as well. So I'm going to say that although crypto right now is being supported by conservatism, again from that sub branch of it, which is libertarianism, the subsection, or rather like an adjacent kind of political view, or political view that's overlaps more heavily with conservatism. There's a deep cynicism in crypto, and a fatalism that is totally found in liberal inclinations. So let's talk about conservatism first. Conservatism, as I understand it, on the systemic level, is one of protectionism. It's about cautiously moving towards the future, progress, changes in our political apparatuses, changes in our news media, changes in technology, changes in food. Um, Conservatism is about saying that what is already the case is good enough to protect, and it's not worth the risk of altering your political constituents, altering your political system, altering your monetary system, altering your food supply. Which again, conservatism gets a lot of things right in terms of our modern world and what we have wrong. Um, Conservatism is also pessimistic about change being worth the risk, right? So there is kind of a pessimism that progressing or moving forward or altering things in this kind of moving forward type way or view is actually beneficial. So, it's a small caveat there. But overall, I think conservatism is optimistic. It says that the systems that we have right now, or the systems that our forefathers have, or that our parents have, are good and worthwhile, that they got something correct, which is also another distinction that we'll talk about. Conservatism is more likely to say that we can know what is correct and what is not correct. And I find very much that I'm aligned with conservatives on this point, on a philosophical and moral stance, as it were. Conservatives are also optimistic, and this is both of them, the systemic or system view as well as the individual view, will be important here. But I really came to this conclusion, or this insight, this philosophical insight, from considering the moral stance that conservatives have. And the moral stance, or the stance on the individual that conservatives have, is that individuals can affect positive change in their lives, that things are not predetermined or fatalistic, that the number one individual or the number one force in one's becoming successful or not is their own mind or their own mentality. And again, I think there's many correct things to be said about this. I will say at this point, again, I do have more liberal leanings, and I think that liberals get it more correct more of the time, or at least maybe my personality leads me to believe that, and I can explain. But fundamentally, conservatism is optimistic, and I do think that there are general trends with people like Joe Rogan, like Lex Friedman, who are generally put in a box that is more conservative. I'm not exactly sure if this is always true. I think Joe Rogan has obviously moved to the conservative right in more recent times, especially with having Trump in his podcast and showing support for the Trump regime, which I definitely find very disagreeable. But overall, there's a certain level of health consciousness that's imbued inside conservatism. There's certain values that men are reaching for, about being able to, as Jordan Peterson says, like clean your house, do your bed, prop yourself up, be a strong person and a reliable person in your family. Bear your cross, so to use Christian imagery and ideology there. which again I don't subscribe to at all, and part of the reason why I'm pretty liberal leaning overall, I would say. Um, so overall, conservatives have, I would say, a realist view, and I think liberals have a realist view as well, but for different reasons. But I do think that conservatism is unrealistic, and we'll get to again why I find liberalism or progressivism much more appealing on an intellectual level. Um, but that said, conservatism has many flavors of optimism about self-change, self-improvement, and you don't see that with liberals. And it's precisely because, now to start talking about liberalism, liberalism is inherently cynical, and it's inherently cynical for the reason that it is systems that control us. It is the state. It is a history of slavery. It's a history of racism. It's a history of feudalism, about those who owned and those who did not. It's a history of the economics. And going to today's stance, it's the wealth gap between individuals. It's the class warfare. These factors are things that predetermine your outcomes such that it is very hard to escape them, and it makes your life feel very fatalistic. Um, so again, I said I'm a liberal is because I do believe these things. So I both believe that the only person who can do good by you and get you out of a certain bad situation that you're in is obviously yourself. And most people who find success in this life will report to you. This is survivorship bias, by the way, but they will report to you that an important part of that success was self-belief or a certain level of confidence, even if they hated themselves or had a lack of confidence in other parts of their lives. Usually, success in this life goes hand in hand with some form of confidence and competency. So there is no denying, and there's multiple, I think, psychological experiments as well that show you that um, having a sense of fatalism, having a sense that you don't have autonomy, that you can't change the direction that a certain uh, a certain group is going in, a certain path is going in, a certain that your superiors are asking you to go in. Like if you feel like you don't have control of the situation, a lot of people do give up and do not push back, and at the detriment of themselves or others, or even the life of others. In those famous, I don't think it was the Stanford prison experiment is another one I'm thinking of, but the famous experiment where in Psychology 101, people were asked to electrocute other people in the other room at the behest of the fake scientific researcher beside them, and wouldn't stop until even after hearing horrible, violent screams and then silence. So it is to say that obviously, like our preconditioning of conditioning around us is very much affects our outcomes and how we navigate this world. So again, I've established now that conservatism is an optimistic viewpoint overall. Um, and I think that we can see that colloquially or anecdotally in many conservatives being more concerned with their health and their food choices. And we see, on the other hand, that to the detriment of people who are liberal, they subscribe so heavily to the fact that everything is systemic, which I think there's very good reason to believe, and again, why I sympathize with this political view more than the other. But it's to their own detriment. They don't believe that they can change their food environment. They believe that because of systemic issues, either present or from the past, they can't rise above their current situations, and it's to their own detriment. Again, like this is not, even though it's correct, it's not helpful for them as an individual navigating this world. So, although it is correct that if you live in a food desert and fast food is relatively cheap, even though now it's quite expensive, I imagine, um, it's true that you are more likely than not to be obese. It certainly, it's also true that it doesn't have to be that way, and you can become knowledgeable and find cheaper foods that are available to you even in your food desert that can at least stave off obesity. Now, will you be someone who's necessarily healthy and getting all the nutrients that you need to get? No, right? But for example, bananas are pretty cheap. I think ubiquitously, almost everywhere. Apples are sometimes cheap, sometimes not. Um, Certain nuts are preserved for a very long time, and they're pretty cheap. So there's a way in which you, from my understanding, you can navigate most food spaces and make correct choices. They'll be very limited. And so again, I think the liberals will be like, this is unfair because the more tasty, calorically dense foods that preserve for a longer time are the only ones present to me, and there's a lot more variety. Adam, you're asking me to only eat like 5 out of the 100 things I could eat at the grocery store. But my point here is not to diminish what the liberal mind will say about the situation. I think they're absolutely correct. But what I'm saying is that truly in any situation, even the food desert that I'm described, it really is the case that you're the only one who can control that. And we have to draw a distinction between things being possible and things being probable. So to throw the conservatives a bone, it is possible for you to stave off obesity. Obviously, not have an ideal macro and micronutrient intake, but you can stave off obesity by doing certain things, even if you're in kind of a food desert. On the other hand, we have to think about probabilities, and this is why I'm a liberal, because I think for the most part, it's for when you see the masses doing something, um, when changes are propagating through an entire society or nay, even the world, we have to admit that this isn't an individual choice thing, especially if you were to poll individuals and they were to tell you we don't want this to happen. So, a perfect case in point for me, I mean, this explains my almost my whole worldview when it comes to this topic, is precisely obesity rates around the world. You have India, you've got China, you've got even places like Kenya now who are reporting obesity rates that are rising over time. Meanwhile, we still live in an environment where being obese or overweight is not treated well. It's looked down upon, and it has not only is it looked down upon socially, which would be enough reason to avoid it, but it also has obviously negative health effects. Like people literally have cancer or die from overeating. Again, the relationship with cancer is that cancer is uh, highly correlated with excess of the body, specifically of sugar. So higher cancer rates are to be assumed when a population or even the globe is consuming more sugar. Now, there's many more things, including the sun, that's causing higher cancer rates. But it's obvious that it's a disease of excess and of changing the epigenomes to ones that are more aligned with cancer in the body. So again, I just look over the world population getting obese over time. This is obviously the change is not a moral failure of cultures. It is so obvious to me that the case is that the food supply itself has changed. That we've developed new foods, new industrial foods, new fast foods. We're spreading them across the world, and we have food scientists working on the most addictive combination of salt, sugar, and fat. And it's just no wonder that this is happening. And again, it's to no one's benefit other than the food companies. So that's why this is a case study as to why I feel like the liberals have much more important things to say on these global or wide issues than a conservative ever would to me. And again, I would agree with basically everything the conservative is saying, um, but not find the conclusion that they usually find, which is therefore it's the moral failing of individuals writ large, basically, like across the entire world now when it comes to obesity, that is causing the obesity epidemic, and people just have to be more responsible. I think this is ridiculous. But enough about that. Let's switch over to Bitcoin then. With Bitcoin, it is a fundamentally cynical take on the global economic system. So, I explained to many people that the global economic system is broken. What I mean by the global economic system is fiat currency, specifically nation states fiat currencies, and specifically the US fiat currency, because there is a way in which you can think of all, to use a kind of a crypto analogy, all other fiat currencies are basically layer twos or derivatives from the US dollar. And that's because it's the world reserve currency. So with that in mind, crypto is a specifically Bitcoin, I will say, but also crypto in general is specifically very skeptical, right? Inside of crypto, starting with Bitcoin, you've got this assertion that the global economy, based off of a layer of fiat, is fundamentally sick. It is a sick and dying organism. It cannot subsist. And of course, I think this is factually borne out by the fact that currencies do fail overall. Um, Rome apparently failed due to even they weren't using a currency; they were using a money, but they were basically devaluing their gold, so their money supply. So it is the like nation states historically have fallen due to economic factors, or at the very least, there's an entwining of the economic factors with non-economic factors. So we've got this sick individual, this sick organism that is the current world economic order. And to make this more apparent to you, you're entirely aware of what I'm saying, and you're aware of it precisely because you complain, and I complain, and we all complain about the affordability change, about inflation, about how you used to be able to go to, I don't know, McDonald's and buy a large coffee for $1, and now it's $2.50. About how and energy inputs are changing, about how everything is being repriced, about how millennials can't own a home anymore, about how in the 1950s and 60s, it seems like someone could work a job, a single job, as a single income, a bread earner, while the mother stayed home and they could raise 2 to 3 children. I'm not saying that those children had the same material betterment or material lifestyle that we've been privileged to, people who grew up in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that it was the case and it was kind of standard. And now people feel hopeless, and oftentimes they don't have healthcare, they don't have good healthcare. And they can see that their federal governments are racking up debt. Their budget is always overhead. They're always over their toes, so to speak, when it comes to the finances. And there seems to be no stopping it now. It seems like this has been ratcheting up since at least the 1980s, and there's no stopping it. And we all kind of know where this is heading to. It's not a good place. At the same time, so I'm trying to impress upon you again that the global monetary order is sick to its core. We're also seeing wealth disparities grow like we haven't seen since the American Gilded Age. I'm not American myself, as you can probably tell from my accent, but apparently in the Gilded Age, you had the Rockefellers. You had people who were. I think this was like the booming 20s. Was like the peak of this kind of Gilded Age. You had wealth disparity like you've never seen, and it seems like we're just moving back to that. Like there's no way to stop this. If you look at the Pareto principle, which I'm very interested in, or the Pareto distribution, it is the fact that like 20% of the roads get 80% of the traffic, right? 20% of the movies get 80% of the ticket spot for them. There's this phenomenon that you find even throughout nature. Um, and so it seems like that's also going to be true of finances, if it's not already. It seems to be actually worse than this, but it's like 20% of the households own 80% of the wealth. I think in America, the top 10% of individuals own 94% of assets. So that's stocks, bonds, houses, real estate, these kind of things. The top 10% own 94%. Another statistic from America: the top three families, I think it is, or the top three individuals, income earners. I think it's something like Bezos, Musk, and I'm not sure who else, but it's like the top three. They own more wealth. They have more wealth at their disposal than the bottom 50% of the country. So you look at all this and you go, something seems to be broken, something's not working. And it seemed to be working for the middle class and for the majority of people better in the past. This also is exacerbated. So you've got to understand the cynicism here. This is exacerbated by the fact that material sciences have gotten better. Energy production has gotten better, right? Like renewable energy is now a thing much more than it was 20, 30, and 40 years ago. Our understanding of physics, computation has gone way down, right? We have unlocked efficiencies. We're unlocking efficiencies in robotics. We're unlocking efficiencies in self-driving cars. We're unlocking efficiencies now in AI. We've actually become much more productive than we've been ever in the past in the world. And even though we've become more productive, the inflation and the cost of living is going out of hand. The government debts are going out of hand. So that's how much the money supply is being inflated away, that even though our productivity is ripping and roaring at a certain rate, again, productivity would actually like balance out inflation. If you increase your money supply, but you have enough productivity to back it up, then you have got kind of like an equilibrium. So what I'm saying is that we're ripping economically and technologically. We're becoming more efficient. We have better materials, better processes, better factories, better AI, better systems, better computation. And yet, even though our productivity is booming in a way like probably we've never seen in the world, our inflation rate is still going up so high that it's outstripping it, and the cost of living is going up massively, and real purchasing power for earners is not keeping up at all. Another cynical worldview, just to kind of put a cap on this, is that we have more educated people than ever before. We have people with undergraduate degrees, people with graduate degrees, we have people with master's degrees, we have people with PhDs who this workforce doesn't give a shit about them. There's no place for them. They don't have the earnings. When I was growing up, my parents would say, just get a university degree. And I'm sure a lot of other parents said that as well. Also get a master's degree, get anything, because we've seen how well it positions you for the future. And one of the big betrayals for, I think, the millennial generation was seeing that that was not true, that 4 years was wasted, or used, I should say, and in a lot of cases, a lot of debt was racked up, and it was to the benefit of the universities themselves and maybe the people who are offering the loans, and not to the actual individual consumers of this product, right? Now, we can get into a conversation about how education is not necessarily about getting a job, but certainly none of the universities are at pains to correct that mistake, that intuition, that assertion that is no longer true. They're not trying to correct it all. They love the fact that it's there is a strong correlation in many societies that the only way to get a job and to be effective and to earn a decent income is to go through university, to go into debt. Okay, so I've talked to you about how the global economy is sick, how things aren't working, and I'm really pleading with you that you've seen all these things I'm talking about. You've already seen everything I'm saying. You complain about it every day. You notice the difference between your lifestyle. When you hear an assertion like, in North America, the millennial generation will be the first ones to do worse than their parents, i.e., not being able to afford certain things, delaying marriage, delaying having children, giving up on the workforce entirely, giving up and playing video games and smoking pot all day, then you know people who have done this, and the level of cynicism is very high. And you know your own circumstance for the most part. Most people who would be watching this are not doing very well, right? And that could include their parents as well. I'm not necessarily saying millennials are the only ones having a hard time, but I am saying that they're a highly educated group, who seem to have done a lot of the right things, and the economy has shifted under the feet. So your parents would tell you, go shake someone's hand and hand off the resume in person. No one wants that. It's all automated now. Most of the job postings are ghost job postings. They're not even serious job posting. And a lot of people have moved off to the gig economy at this point. Well, what's going to happen to our pensions? No one even knows. Like, where will the healthcare system be in 2050? Who the fuck knows, right? So overall, there's a sickness. I think we're witnessing the sickness. We'll see what comes of it. But income Bitcoin now. Income Here comes Bitcoin. 2008, this group of people or one person was working on it. It's an extension of work that has been done for decades to try to create a truly native digital currency. Hash cash, digital gold, these other attempts were made, and nothing worked, nothing stuck. To have digital scarcity, true digital scarcity, and to stop double spend, to not require a third-party mediator, to have two people who can't trust each other exchange value on the internet, was a very, very hard nut to crack. In 2009, the solution, as far as I'm concerned, as far as we know right now, in the intervening 15 years since, the solution was found. It was found with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, at its very basis, is a proposition. It's a proposition that says that individuals will be able to decide where their money is stored, where they want to store their value, and that they will not have to participate in the fiat currency world if it is not working for them. Now, the fiat currency world is a very efficient world at moving money around. I enjoy the efficiencies of fiat every day. I enjoy the fact that I'm not trying to do final settlement every day. I can use my MasterCard, I can tap my phone, I can pay my bills, I can get paid in fiat, and it's very quick, it's very seamless, right? I enjoy that benefit of it. But the hidden cost of having a centralized organization controlling the money supply, where every individual voter has no input into that, where the people who are extremely wealthy on the system can pollute the entire system with their money, to pollute the politics and the policy and the legislation behind the system. That is something that no one wants, and that most people are ignorant of. They don't talk about it. They don't talk about this system that they're a part of, that they're implicitly supporting. And whether they know it or not, and they don't need to know it, and eventually they will, as I've come to know it, and many other people are going to come to know it, they no longer have to put up with that shit. Once they can identify the problem, the enemy is a lack of information, it's a lack of autonomy, it's a lack of control in your own monetary fate. When you understand that that's the main problem, and you understand that there is a solution, there is a purely digital, empowering solution now for you as an individual to step away from that system, to not contribute your economic energy into that system infinitely, to diverge, to branch off, to choose another path. When people finally understand this, and they're waking up and they're starting to understand it, it will be empowering. So again, what am I saying? Crypto is an extremely pessimistic proposition. It is viewing the world, the base problems of your reality, which are not about gender ideology, and they're not about uh, how the washroom is configured. They're not about uh, past uh, grievances. They're not about white supremacy. They're not about the Jews. Your the main basis of your problem, if you think it's those other things, you're extremely wrong. The culture wars, you're extremely wrong. The main base of most of our problems is the fact that we don't have an economic future that is reliable. We don't have a choice. We see fatalism. We don't have autonomy. And it's fucked us up so bad. And it's so hard to capture and understand, to grapple with ideologically and intellectually, that people have simply given up. They just know something's wrong and they know that they're getting fucked, but they don't know how and they don't know why. Once you understand that the global system is actually rigged against you, and not because of some conspiracy theory, I'm telling you the facts. I'm telling you that the top 3 people in America are more wealthy than the bottom 50%. I'm telling you that the wealth gap has grown exponentially. I'm telling you that CEO pay has gone up by 300 times on average for many industries, where its average worker pay has gone up 50%. The wealth is being captured. We don't need to become to try to create a Marxist communist revolution here, which has been for a lot of young people, at least left-leaning people, a reaction to capitalism. Capitalism. I don't think capitalism is bad. It's the control of the money supply and the perversion of it through money and politics that is bad. It's absolutely fucked, and it's causing all of your problems. So Bitcoin is cynical insofar as the worldview where Bitcoin is useful, what Bitcoin sees, what a Bitcoiner sees as being true of the world, is absolutely disgraceful. It's disgusting. It's fatalistic. It's inevitable. This view is horrible, but within Bitcoin, there is a promise. There is a potential. There is another way that's being presented to you. And it's your choice to wake up and do the research, so to speak. Though I don't mean to be facetious here or dismissive, but it will eventually be our opportunity to do the research and to figure these things out. Or what are the other options? And maybe you do the research and you hate Bitcoin, by the way, which is fine. Maybe you disagree with what I've said and the worldview that Bitcoin has and the diagnosis of the actual problem. But without doing that research, how are you going to figure it out? You're going to hear it from the mainstream media? You're going to hear it from the mainstream politicians? You're going to find it from the people who are enjoying sucking the teat of society and having their way with the money system. You're not going to hear it from these people overall. So although there has been a breakthrough and there is institutionalization happening, the majority of the media is still quite skeptical, and the majority of people are still quite ill-informed about exactly what Bitcoin represents. It is a reaction to, a response to the global financial order that has, and don't take my word for it, anecdotally, factually, academically, been causing quite a disruption in the lives of specifically the middle class. So there is hope here. Hopefully that was an interesting talk. It was a bit of a lecture, of course, a bit of a rant, but I do feel passionate about these things. And hopefully I connected the dots here. So we did talk about conservatism. We talked about conservatism being optimistic, about how conservatism proposes that you as an individual can make a change in the world. And then I talked about liberalism, which I believe I'm more in the camp of, talking about systematic changes, talking about how there's a fatalism, how we can't actually change the world that we're in. And then I talk about Bitcoin, even though, sorry, I forgot to mention libertarians, even though libertarians and conservatives are the ones who are propping up Bitcoin right now because they're pro-freedom. They're pro-freedom. They're also taking on, by being pro-freedom in this way, they're also taking on the worldview of Bitcoin, which is ultra cynical, which again is against conservatism. What we're saying is that we can't fix the system. We can't conserve the financial system and fix it. We need a revolution. So in the style of Bernie Sanders, we need a political revolution. We need a revolution. We need to do a 180. We need to go in a vastly different direction. That's what Bitcoin represents, and it needs to do that because of very cynical reasons. Because the systems that we're born into, the system of our skin color, of our culture, of the history of indecencies and grievances that have gone on between various cultures, between the Europeans and several other nations, maybe all of them. I mean, blame the British, as a lot of people like to say, for drawing all sorts of weird lines on maps and conquering the world for basically 300 years. Um, that all of these things actually predetermine your fate. And this is a very liberal worldview. I think that mostly it's correct. I think that they have it right on, and I think that the liberals are much able to better diagnose the problem with the financial system as also being a fatalistic one that is only going to get worse. So we have the conservatives, we have the libertarians, we have got the small government people who are supporting Bitcoin right now, and the liberals don't understand that actually Bitcoin is fully actually in line with their view of many systems being fatalistic, and causing issues, rampant issues that can't be escaped from within the system itself. That you need to actually break the system, right? Okay. Anyways, thanks again for listening. That was the Satoshi Chain. That was me rambling on about conservatism, liberalism, and the philosophy of Bitcoin. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch you again later. Bye.